This is a module on lesson planning, which is the best tool that the teacher can really design for her class. And I like this little statement from The Little Prince, if you read the book by Anton the Exuberant, where he says, a goal without a plan is just a wish. It's like wishful thinking, that you might do something good for everybody in the class, but it may not happen if you don't have a plan for it, really. And which is why lesson plans are very important. At Shikshangan, we like to present what we call the teaching learning cycle. And the teaching learning cycle is a framework which is very enduring, and you might like to retain it for yourself for years to come. So right at the beginning and right at the center, we put the individual student needs. So it's not just lip service to child-centered education. And around that, we built this cycle of what is worth teaching. What is worth teaching? I wonder if you've seen the book by Professor Krishna Kumar, which is a beautiful little book which tells you that what is it that needs to come into the curriculum. Once we're clear about that, we then decide the pedagogy of teaching. So the how, that means how should I teach? And then, because it is a cycle, we also conclude that by saying, how do I know whether my students have got it? And because it's a cycle, it's a formative assessment opportunity, because it gives me the reason or the opportunity to go back and see why is it that all my students are not getting it. This is known as a teaching learning cycle, and it's extremely enduring because you will see your lesson plan in it. So what does the what stand for? The learning outcomes, learning objectives, learning aims, targets, goals, whatever you might want to call it. Many terms to say the same thing. Basically meaning, what is it that I want my students to really know and learn and understand? That is the what. And what is the how? It's the teaching strategies, teaching techniques, methodologies, pedagogy that we would be using to ensure that everybody is getting it. And when we say it's a cycle, the whether over here, which means the assessment, is indicating a formative assessment and not a summative one, because it gives me the chance to go back to see how am I doing. It's a feedback to me as a teacher. Having put this straight up in front, and you will see that there is a clear picture here of what a lesson plan really is all about. What does a lesson plan look like? This is what it is. It's nothing more than this. Let's begin at the beginning, where we are saying that we must think about how do I actually frame the learning objectives. Do I have a framework which I can share with you? Yes, I do, actually. It's a fantastic one which is developed at Shikshangan, which we like to call CSV2, and I will soon be explaining to you what does that acronym mean. So we're saying that this is a framework and it's a very enduring one, and you really do not need anything more than this. If you do, write it into the comment section and let us know how are you thinking. We think that all knowledge comprises of a few components. Some part of knowledge is the conceptual knowledge. That means it's full of ideas about things generally. So that's conceptual knowledge. What are concepts? Concepts are ideas. They could be abstract, they could be concrete, but all ideas and all subjects have conceptual knowledge. So for example, if you're saying math, then addition is an idea, multiplication is an idea. If you're saying history, revolution is an idea. And then there are skills, which is also called procedural knowledge. Procedure, a process, a step-by-step way of doing something, which is how we call it a skill. So what is procedural knowledge? Nothing but skills. So that takes care of the C and the S. Then there is a third component of knowledge, which we like to call facts. In some literature, it's called information or details, which means every subject will have facts. 2 into 2 is 4. India got her freedom in 1947. Water boils at 100 degrees. The tilt of the axis of the earth, etc. Every subject will have facts. These are not concepts. These are facts which you just need to remember. So concepts need to be understood, skills need to be practiced, facts need to be recalled and remembered. That's the third component of knowledge. All of this is human knowledge created by all of us human beings who are walking the planet. So facts are unchanging truths. They remain constant. Okay. Then we are liking to add the idea of values right here. So value education cannot be a separate period. It should be dovetailed into the syllabus, whatever you may be teaching, as gently as possible. Do not try to force fit it. So the first V stands for values and the second V stands for vocabulary. Why do we call it out? Because I believe that every teacher is first and foremost a language teacher. It is not the job of the English or the Bangla or the Malayalam or the Hindi teacher to get the vocabulary of all the subjects done. There is a vocabulary of geography, a vocabulary of math, a vocabulary of science, and that needs to be dealt with that teacher in her class. Which is why the CSV2 calls out vocabulary also. Let me illustrate this with an example. So in the vocabulary, we look at both academic and incidental vocabulary, and we will talk at this at some point later. We are also adding a line there which came up first, and that's okay, that we are saying that whenever you think about writing objectives and you're thinking about conceptual knowledge with your own experience as a teacher and your own years of teaching in the class, you would know that what are some of the misconceptions that children will end up with. So whenever two ideas are very close, students are likely to have a misconception which stay with them for life. So be careful of that and put that down in your objectives so that you do something about it. Let's take an example, and I'm imagining that I'm teaching, or you're teaching, water cycle in, let's say, grade 4 or 5. A very, very abstract idea. Students do not see water cycling through the atmosphere at all. But they're introduced to it when you're 10 years old, 11 years old, and huge words like evaporation, condensation, etc. come in. Now suppose I was writing the objectives with the framework of CSV2. So my conceptual knowledge would be, on this one slide, whatever I can show you, that student will be able to understand and explain the idea of a cycle first and foremost, describe the linear process of evaporation, describe how condensation as well as precipitation takes place. These are all concepts that they need to know. You might remember, or you might probably realize that in that sense, every word denotes some concept, isn't it? Second is the skills, the procedural knowledge, the skills. So I might say students would be able to demonstrate how the water moves through the atmosphere through a live experiment. And I want to highlight here that skills do not mean just psychomotor skills, doing something by hand. Skills also mean cognitive skills, thinking. What kind of cognitive activities would you put your students into? So I'm saying that they should be able to classify, differentiate the different forms of water. Third is F, CSF, facts. Remember that 70% of the earth is covered with water, boiling point, freezing point. These are all facts. I would probably look at the vocabulary, the values of there is a need to conserve potable water. Because I'm talking about the cycle. Can't destroy, cannot make. Okay? That's a gentle fit of a value. And lastly, the vocabulary. The academic words which appear and the non-academic words both need to be dealt with. And like I said earlier, think of possible misconceptions. Evaporation and condensation is a very, very good case of students having a misconception. And we'll talk about this in some other episode. So that's what we wanted to say about how do you really set objectives and so that you do not miss any piece of knowledge. That's the first episode. Once again, CSFV2, concept, skills, facts, values, and vocabulary. If you like what we're presenting to you through Shikshangan's YouTube channel, do subscribe to us, like it, and do leave your comments in the feedback section because we'd like to improve what we're doing and bring you stuff that you need really. Thank you for being with us.